Hello and a very warm welcome to Mark Adlestone OBE DL. I hope I got that right. Yeah.
Yes. Thanks, Karen.
Thanks so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join in this J-commerce interview. First question, can I please ask you to start by telling us a bit about yourself and your business, Beaverbrooks Jewelers, please?
Sure. I'm third generation. So the business was started in 1919 by my grandfather and his two brothers. And it's been an extraordinary journey, really. I joined the business in 1979, and I'm still here 43 years later as the business continues to grow. One of the things I would say that probably is the most relevant to this particular interview and to your viewers is the methodology and the culture that we've introduced into the business over the years. It's very much a meritocracy. So even though it's a family business, it's very much professionally run. It's family owned and it's professionally run. I'm the chairman now. I became chairman in 2012. And for many years, I've realized it's important to allow my people to grow, to fly, to become the best that they can be. And so I've had to find a way, which I have to say I do reasonably well, of allowing them that space, giving them that space and empowering them to make decisions. And actually to run with the business and to feel that they own the business. And that way, that really drives their enthusiasm and their passion. And I think that's, a hugely important part of the success that we've had within our business.
Did you find it maybe hard to relinquish, I guess, control to allow that to happen?
It's very interesting. It's counterintuitive. But in a way, the more control I've given away, the more control I feel I have, if that makes any sense. That means I don't get involved in the micro detail always, but sometimes I do. And sometimes I just ask loads of questions. And I feel that it allows me to have a broader strategic objective view of the direction of the business and the way that it's going. And it's been a process. It didn't happen overnight. So I've been comfortable with that change from me being super involved in the day-to-day nuts and bolts of the business, if you like, to becoming much more strategic, I would say. One of the things that I'm very passionate about, most passionate about, is my people, the people within the business. And that hasn't changed. So my connection with my people, with my colleagues, we have over 1,000 colleagues now, and it's, for me, hugely important that I spend time with each of them individually, treating them as individuals, which they are, and giving them that respect. That's crucially important, and that hasn't changed at all, as I've given more responsibility away. But it works very well. And the other thing it allows me to do, Chaim, is to spend a fair amount of my time on communal and charity work. So I would say roughly I spend 60% of my time on Beaverbrooks and 40% of my time on charity and community.
Oh, okay. That's a lot of time. Okay. Just rewinding a sec, what you said about it's a family business. Was it always a plan to go into the family business? And if so, did that ever make you, I guess, maybe complacent in your studies? Because you sort of just knew you could walk in to the business?
I was never, yeah, the answer is yes, it was always part of the plan. I was never put under pressure by the family, but there was always an expectation that this would happen. But your question about complacency is interesting. I was never complacent. But what did happen was I went to Oxford University to read law, jurisprudence, actually. And I left within the first year because I didn't have that motivation. What I actually wanted to do was read business studies at Manchester University, but the school were very keen to push me into Oxbridge, as much as anything for their figures. It made it look good for them to get this number of people through to Oxford and Cambridge. And I was seduced into this whole idea of then what was 7th term entry. So I'd have 10 months off to travel and do stuff that I wanted to do. And I think to some extent I got out of the habit of studying, and I didn't have the motivation. That was the thing, I didn't have the motivation. And it was disappointing to my parents, but I did say to them, I remember at the time saying, which would have upset you more or disappointed you more, me leaving Oxford as I'm doing, or me not coming into the family business? It was a bit of a checkmate move, really, because it was clear that they would prefer me. They obviously wanted me to come into the business, the family business. Yeah. But there was never any pressure on me to do that. It was just something I always innately wanted to do.
Sort of continuing that family aspect. So, did being a member of the founding family affect your relationships and work at all? Like, did anyone, I guess, try and suck up to you because they knew, you're Mark Adlestone?
Possibly. I wasn't really aware of it if that was the case. But I do remember, just as a counter to that, I became a director at the age of 25, which is very young, in 1984. And I remember when it was announced to the senior management team, there was probably a group of 8 or 10 of us sitting around the table. And one of them said, it's really stupid of him, he said, "Well, wonders will never cease." And I thought, why would you even say that, even if you think it?
Yeah.
So I think I always had to, I think I had to work harder to prove myself, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Because people, look, I got there through nepotism. There's no two ways around that. But I think because of that, I had to prove myself even more. And I worked even harder, and I wanted to work harder than anybody else and be seen to be having more of an impact than anyone else. So I think that was, for me, the family issue. I had a lot to prove, and I had something to prove as well, because I left university.
Yeah, Oxford University.
Yeah.
As well.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. How did you develop your judgment of character as you were working your way? I assume you started at the bottom to get an idea of how things work.
I've always been interested in people. My dad gave me a book to read when I was 18 called by Dale Carnegie. It's a classic book, yeah. How to Win Friends and Influence People. And that had a huge impact on me. I've always wanted people to like me, but I've realized that it's not just about getting people to like me. It's about the relationship I have with them, and it being authentic and real. And really, from the early days when I got involved with the business, I felt I had a connection with people. I felt I was a good listener. I didn't realize how important listening was at the time, but I've realized subsequently that active listening is hugely, critically important in a business. And I was good at giving feedback as well. And I was honest. I've always been honest with people. So I haven't always told them what they wanted to hear, but I've told them what they needed to hear. And I've done it, I hope, in a very kind way, but also in a very assertive way. So I think it's been intuitive. And I think when I joined the business, and from the moment I joined the business, that sort of focus on people was hugely important to me. And I don't think, whilst we'd always been a very good business to work for, my dad and his cousins, and the generations before him, or the generation before him, were always very kind. But I think what I did was I took it to a different level, that it's not just about kindness, although kindness is hugely important, but it's actually about how you push people, how you treat people, how you empower people, and professionalizing that, and also making, it's great to be a kind workplace, but what impact does that actually have on the success of the business and on the financial success of the business? So I think it was trying to draw all those things together and holding people accountable, creating collaboration so that people didn't work in silos. And that's been an iterative process, that's taken me years. But going back to the beginning of your original question, I think I've always had this interest in people.
Yeah.
And it's evolved and developed.
Yeah, I guess being in retail is the perfect place to practice that, isn't it? Because what would you say the percentage of, I guess, your retail shopfront staff versus back office, your head office type people?
So we have over 1,000 colleagues. I would say that our head office also includes our e-commerce and warehouse and dispatch, and so it's slightly distorted. But let's say, because that's a big part of our business now.
Yeah.
A third of our business. But let's say there's 250 people there and maybe 750 people out in the stores.
Yeah. Yeah, so that personal relationship is probably really important, I guess.
Yeah, but it's not just important in our head office in St. Anne's. It's important in all our stores. It's important.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
This is the challenge, isn't it? You know, how do we have 72 locations. We've got 71 stores, plus we've got our warehouse and office and everything, from Aberdeen to Southampton, and from Belfast to Norwich, and all points in between.
Yeah.
And I think if you were to go into, it's an open invitation for anyone to try it, into any of our stores and just ask them how they feel, how connected they feel to the business, I'd hope you get a very positive response. And I think that's what we've been very good at doing. We're very strong at communication, very, very strong at communication. You know, I can talk about that in more detail, but that's a critical part of what we do.
Okay. A final family related question is, you know, we said earlier that, you know, you got 3 daughters. Are any of them coming into the family business?
Yeah, well, yes, actually. 2 are actually already in the business.
Okay.
So Chloe, my middle daughter, is our wedding ring and diamond ring buyer. And Tara, my oldest daughter, is working with her husband, Rafi, and they have a business called Mintini, which is not jewelry related at all, but it's selling children's wear between the ages of 0 and 5, so it could be of interest to you, if I am.
Yeah.
And we actually own that business as well. And there are synergies, of course, between children and weddings and children's jewelry. And I could see, you know, that business. Yeah, I can see that growing. So Tara, so that's something that Tara's doing, which isn't jewelry, but it's within the business. My youngest daughter, Libby, is at University of Birmingham. She is in her 2nd year. She's studying business studies and communication. So who knows where she wants to go? But when asked the question, what do you want to do when you're older? Her answer is to become an entrepreneur, whatever that means. So who knows? Who knows the answer to that? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned charity. So I did a bit of research. So Beaverbrooks, am I correct saying, donated over £17 million since 2000? That makes sense?
That's right. Yeah, it's about 17.5 million now. Yeah.
So hundreds of charities, and obviously yourself are massively involved with charities like the Fed, JLC, and Mustard Tree, I think. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, that's correct. Yes.
So obviously charities are a massive part of being Jewish. So how would you say, for those who maybe are aspiring to be involved in any community work and charity work, so what advice would you give them to that they can make a meaningful impact in the world like you are, but also getting that fine balance between, you know, work and life? Okay.
Let me just roll back a little bit. I will answer your question, but I just want to sort of add a little bit of meat to what you were saying. I've always felt for a long time, for always really, even from being a young boy, that I've wanted to be involved charitably and within the community. And that's been very important to me. As far as the sort of financial side of things is concerned, I attended a shir by Rabbi Portnoy, who was my rabbi until he moved to Israel.
It's really good. My class in school.
Ah, yeah. Okay. Well, he was a huge influence on me. He told us that as Jews, we have an obligation to give a minimum of 10% of our income to charity, net income, to a maximum of 20%. And that really influenced me. And that figure of 20% is the figure that I've worked on really ever since then, from a corporate business perspective. And we actually, I say this, we treat giving money away as seriously as we treat making money. So I created the Beaverbrooks Charitable Trust. There are 4 trustees, myself, my MD, Anna Blackburn, Susie Nicholas, who's our charity manager, and Paul Holly. So myself and 3 non-Jewish colleagues are trustees. And I roughly try and split the money that we distribute 50-50, 50% going to Jewish and Israeli charities and 50% to the wider non-Jewish secular world. And I do that intentionally because I feel that as Jews, if we don't give to Jews, then nobody else will. But equally, we're part of an ecosystem. I feel this very strongly. I think we're codependent on very much codependent on the non-Jewish world. And I believe we have to be seen to be involved, and we should actively get involved as much as possible. Now, you mentioned the mustard tree. So in 2019, 2020, I was High Sheriff of Greater Manchester. And this was an honor that was given to me, which was the most extraordinary year of my entire life, because it also coincided with Beaverbrooks' centenary year. So it's the busiest year of my life ever, ever, ever. But it was also the most interesting. And I actually attended 267 events in that period of time.
Wow.
Would have been 300, but that final month was the month that COVID came in mid-March 2020. So that put a stop to that. But in that time, I came across many, many, many charities, non-Jewish charities, and many of them just really appealed to me. And the ones that particularly appealed were the Mustard Tree, which deals with homelessness and poverty within Ancoats, Little Holton, and Eccles. And I am now the chair of Mustard Tree. Triple C, which is a charity empowering disability within the arts. Okay. I'm an ambassador for them, and the African and Caribbean Mental Health Services. I'm a patron of the African and Caribbean Mental Health Services. So very disparate, intentionally so. But at the same time, from a Jewish perspective, I became chair of the Jewish Representative Council in May. Huge changes that are taking place there, and that's another discussion which I'm happy to have, but we don't have time for here. And I'm also an ambassador for Migdal Emunah, which is a charity dealing with sexual abuse in the Jewish community. So I intentionally wanted a broad portfolio, charitable portfolio. And so coming back to your question, which just remind me, sorry, what your question was, but I felt it was important to give that context.
So for those who are aspiring, to do charitable work in the community, but they've also got to work, how do you strike that ideal balance?
Okay, well, look, it's difficult for me to answer that one. For me, I have structured my life and my business to allow me to do that. Beaverbrooks gives me the platform to do that. Now, I fully recognize that not everybody is going to be in that position necessarily. However, everything's a balance, isn't it? So I have my work, I have my charities, my community, I have my family, I have my sport, I have time for myself, or I want to have time for myself. How do I balance it all? And the truth is, it's very difficult. Yourself, Chaim, I'm getting the impression that, it's difficult for all of us. How do we find the time to do it? We find the time to do things that we want to do. I'll give you an example. So over the years, going back many years, I used to play a lot of golf. And people say to me, "You don't play much golf now, Mark." I said, "No, I know." Well, they said, "Of course, you're very busy. You haven't got the time." And I said, to be honest, absolutely honest, I think if I really wanted to play the game, I would find the time to do it. We do the things that we are passionate about. But time management is critical. Yeah. So I think it's a question of finding something that you're passionate about and finding a way to integrate it into your life, into your world. And it's that the answer to that is going to be very different for every individual. So I don't really have any great answers other than saying, be very good at time management. I believe I'm very good at time management. I think that's the critical point. I don't have a PA as such. I organize my own diary. The conversation, all of our conversations leading to this Zoom meeting have taken place between you and me. There's been no PA involved. And I don't really understand why somebody would actually give that away, because to me, that's precious. My time is precious, and therefore I want to manage my own time. So find a way to do it is what I would say.
Okay. So off that, do you have one or two time management pieces of advice that you can give to people? Maybe that's stuff that you practice.
It's intuitive to me. I've been doing it for so long now. And actually you asking me to sort of to consciously explain what it is I do in terms of time management is a really interesting question. Well, I have a diary. It's an electronic diary. It allows me to see at a glance everything that's happening in that week, in the year. Whenever I make an appointment, I always look at what's around it. Can I actually make that appointment? Am I giving myself time between the appointments? Am I giving myself time to prepare for this? Am I giving myself time afterwards? Am I giving myself time for my family? And all of those things have to be considered when making appointments, when looking at diary, when constructing my diary. So I guess the thing I would say is bear in mind all of those factors: family, time for yourself, the things that you're passionate about. There is a danger to accept too much, and I've got better at saying no as well. Obviously in a respectful way, but the expression that, the situation when you're on a plane, and if the oxygen masks come down, do you know what you're supposed to do?
You're supposed to do yourself first.
Why?
So that then what you can help others.
Exactly. And it's the same thing with your own time management. You've got to look after yourself first so that you can then look after others. So my advice would be, just every so often, just catch yourself up, just make sure you're not overdoing it. And sometimes, not very often, you just have to say no.
Yeah, I think it's a really good analogy, that with the oxygen mask. Good that. Yeah. Okay, so still talking about, no, not really talking about charities. So I did a bit of research, obviously. So in 2021, Beaverbrooks, you've won multiple awards. So UK's best large company to work for, best retailer to work for, and the Retail Jeweler Employer of the Year. And 2020 was also quite similar. So obviously, firstly, congratulations for all those.
Thank you.
Secondly, how on earth did you manage that during the pandemic? Because you're in the retail sector. Do you know what I mean? You were the hardest.
Yeah, we were. That was probably the greatest accolade we could have had, coming after the year that we'd had, that year of COVID. But if we go back to the conversation earlier in this conversation when I was talking about communication, what we did right from the very beginning was we kept communicating with our people. We kept telling them what was happening. We gave them confidence. We made them feel secure. We made them feel that they would be able to pay their bills.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be out of work. And in fact, many of our people were telling us, actually, and we would send out these videos every 3 days, well, at least once a week, probably twice a week, telling them what the latest news on furlough was, just giving positive stories wherever we could. And many of them said to us that actually them receiving that video uplifted them, because all the news that they were getting was so negative and was dragging them down.
Yeah. And
listening to our videos actually uplifted them. And the number of people who've said to me, following COVID, I know it's still around, but following that intense period of COVID, the gratitude and the appreciation that they have shown for what we did for them. We didn't make anyone redundant. And for people who've been with us a long time, we ensured they got paid 100% of their salaries, even though the furlough would only offer us 80% up to £30,000, and we uplifted that. So all the things you'd probably expect us to do, we did, and we communicated it. And we treated people as individuals. We ensured that when people were off, because they were off for months, weren't they? That we kept in touch, that they kept in touch. There were lots of creative ideas as to how people could keep in touch, quizzes and all these sorts of things. Just really uplifted people's spirits. And we talked about the business as well, and we prepared them for coming back and what that would look like, getting them their mindsets right for that. Those were people in the stores. In the office, we had a complete mixed bunch, because some people worked all the way through, others couldn't. But those people working from home, we had to look after their mental well-being. We checked in all the time, because a lot of people working from home who were not used to working from home, it was a huge change to the whole work life.
And they had their kids as well.
And they had their kids, so they had to homeschool. And for some it was glorious. For some it was amazing. We've got something called Yammer, which is like an internal Facebook.
Yeah.
And we had some people talking about these wonderful walks they were going on with their children, and this was fantastic. And for others, it was a nightmare. The same situation, but just different personal circumstances.
Absolutely.
And we were very, very conscious of those people. So I think it was the communication all the way through and the empathy that we showed that just obviously made the difference.
Absolutely. Okay. So talking about COVID, what would you say COVID has taught you, I guess, as a business, as a chairman, and maybe even personally?
Gosh. I wasn't necessarily one of those people who saw COVID as an opportunity to reset, because I think I've always had a pretty good appreciation. I'd like to think I've always had a pretty good appreciation of life and priorities and balance. I think it's as a business, it's made us more ambitious, because actually we've come back very strongly from COVID, believe it or not. The jewelry business generally, the jewelry industry generally, once we got from about the 12th of April onwards, has been very, very strong. Because I think people who haven't been able to travel, a lot of money's been pumped into the economy, have wanted to spend their money on something, and a nice watch or a nice piece of jewelry has been very, very important for people.
And all the weddings.
Delayed weddings.
Yeah.
Delayed weddings, and all of that coming back. So that's been really important. I think we're more ambitious now than we ever were. I'm not saying it's because of COVID, but it certainly is following COVID. And I think the other thing it probably taught me was to, I remember thinking in the depth of the very early stages of COVID, it felt like an existential crisis for me. I didn't know what would happen to the business. And remaining positive and believing in the future and being positive, I think was hugely important for us. And we just carried on with all our plans. We didn't hold back on anything. And if anything, we doubled up on our investment. We carried on marketing the business, even though we weren't open. So we did a few things that were counterintuitive. So I guess, what did I learn? I learned that even in what appears to be a really, really bad situation, keep believing, keep investing, keep moving forward.
Excellent advice. So you said earlier that about a third of your business is e-commerce now?
Yes, that's right.
So you've obviously been in business a fair while. How have you found this shift from the high street to e-commerce? And obviously you straddle both areas.
We straddle both. It's been extraordinary. And in fact, what has surprised me more than anything was if we go back to the 12th of April 2021, and we've been closed for 3 months, 4 months, obviously our e-commerce was very strong, and I fully expected that to drop when the shops reopened, but they didn't. It didn't. So it was additional business. It was remarkable. And it's been very resilient all the way through. So I think that's been a big shift. COVID has definitely encouraged people to shop online, and they're more comfortable now shopping online. And I guess from our point of view, we offer all options to our clients, so they can purchase from our stores, they can buy online, they can do click and collect, they can phone up, and some people still, go online or even phone through an order, whatever they want to do. And it's really sort of integrating all of those different options for our clients and just letting them choose which option is best for them. But there's no doubt that COVID turbocharged our online business.
Yeah. I think, like, I work in IT industries, and I saw like a lot of people suddenly realizing, hang on, we've really got to catch up now because we've got no choice.
It's been crazy, quite amazing.
So you mentioned right near the beginning of the interview that you're very good at listening to people and giving feedback, but on the flip side of that, how are you like receiving feedback, and how do you deal with any negative comments and critics?
In 1996, I remember we were struggling with what I would consider a high level of labor turnover. And I decided to go out to my colleagues out in the stores and at head office as well, and have groups of what I call focus groups, where I sort of handpicked different groups. And I probably spoke to about 5 groups across the country, asking them all sorts of questions about the business, about what was good about the business, what wasn't good, what they thought the reasons for the high levels or relatively high levels of labor turnover was. And I listened, and it was difficult for them sometimes to listen to some of the criticisms that were coming back. And I had to really sort of hold myself back from trying to answer or justify the reasons for the things that I was hearing. And it was a huge lesson for me that I'm so pleased that I managed to do that, because that criticism, that feedback allowed me to work with my senior management team to improve the business significantly. And the fact that they could see direct improvements as a consequence of the feedback they gave me, I think again enabled us to sort of push on in terms of being seen as a business, a great workplace. So whilst it's difficult to listen and hear that feedback, because our natural tendency is to defend our position, if we can allow ourselves just to listen to what people are telling us. Sometimes they tell us it in a fairly aggressive way, and we would have wished that they would do it in a gentler way. But that can be dealt with separately, tutoring them and as to how to give feedback in a more positive way is a separate issue. So we have to sort of forget that. And we just listen to the raw data that's coming back to us, the raw information. And we allow it to permeate, so we can then think about it, and then we think how we can improve things. But it hurts, it does hurt. It's not, I don't think there's many people, and I'm certainly not one of them, who enjoys hearing criticism, but actually it's through criticism that we grow. So absolutely. Actually, I would encourage it.
Okay. Good answer. So I do actually have another charity related question. So it's a family business, how hard have you found it to build a team around you that shares your core values? Like, it seems as generations go on, people get more selfish and I guess I don't know if they give less charity because of that, but maybe that's a perception. And I guess, so how have you, found those right people to work with, and also how have you had your employees put your values into practice as well?
So we created in 1998 something called the Beaverbrooks Way. Actually, at the time it was a mission statement, but it's now called the Beaverbrooks Way, and it was the values of the business which we shared. And I did an exercise with different groups of colleagues throughout the business, asking them, what do we stand for? What does Beaverbrooks stand for? What are our values? And it was a fascinating exercise. And once we'd sort of brought all those together, I then packaged them up, if you like, and tidied them up and redistributed them to our colleagues, and said, this is who we are, this is what we stand for, this is our purpose. So our purpose, bearing in mind we're a retail jeweler, selling jewelry and watches, our purpose is summed up in 2 words. And those 2 words are enriching lives. So our purpose is to make profit, so that with that profit, we can enrich the lives of those people around us. And those people would be our colleagues, so make sure they're well looked after and remunerated properly, and involved in profit share in the success of the company. Our customers, to make sure that we treat them with respect and integrity, and it's a great experience when they come into our stores. Our suppliers, to make sure we treat them with integrity, and that when we negotiate prices, that we're fair with them. We want to obviously get the best possible price, but we don't want to be screwing them. And it's that balance. And finally, our communities. So all of those people, we're enriching the lives of those communities, of those charities around us. And we recruit people against those values. So our current MD, as an example, Anna Blackburn, joined our company in September 1998. She started in the Trafford Centre. So when the Trafford Centre opened and our store opened there, she joined us. And the reason she joined us, she was actually out working in Africa, doing charitable work out in Africa. And even then, back in 1998, she was aware of our charitable activities. And this really attracted her to our business. She was looking at John Lewis, she was looking at Marks and Spencer's. And she said there was just something about those businesses that felt slightly impersonal. And she just was very taken with our values, because we'd already set out the Beaverbrooks Way and the values, and our focus on charity. So we recruit the type of people who would be interested in that way. So as long as we get the right type of people, then everything else flows from that.
Yeah.
So I think the trick is in recruiting against our values. Now, you've got to be careful, because now our values are out there, people will tell us what they think we want to hear. Exactly. And we've got to be skilled at drilling down to ask for more detail around the things that they're saying, for them to demonstrate that these values they say they've seen. And I think we're pretty good at doing that now. We make mistakes, of course we do. But I think a big factor, the fact that we give 20% of our retained profits goes to charity, is hugely important to our people. The fact that we want to give world-class customer service, excellent customer service to our customers, and build those relationships. The fact that we allow people to be themselves, that we give them autonomy, that we hold them accountable, but that we expect them to collaborate. All of these methodologies, if you like, inspire our people to want to give more to our company. COVID, we were just talking about before, again, they want to give more back because of what we've given them. So it's this virtuous circle that we're creating.
Yeah, good. I like that. This is always an interesting one. With the benefit of hindsight, what would you do different, if anything?
in the business or in life or both?
Or both, yeah.
I've enjoyed the journey, Chaim, and I'm sure I've made mistakes along the way. I've definitely made mistakes along the way, but I don't regret those mistakes, because without making mistakes, we don't grow. It's about sort of being, you need to be aware of your own imperfections, but don't beat yourself up about it. I'm quite relaxed about it. In fact, there is this view of the imperfection of perfectionism. There is no such thing as perfectionism. And actually, it's a very harmful thing to chase, frankly.
Especially
now. And I
spend
spend a lot of my time talking to some of our colleagues, mainly women, interestingly, who are disappointed in themselves because they're not perfect. And I said, I don't want perfection. In fact, it's very destructive. You have to make mistakes. It's good to make mistakes, and we learn from mistakes. And if you're not making mistakes, you're not trying enough different things. So I wouldn't change anything, and I'm really pleased. I wouldn't want to know what the future holds either. I love the not knowing. I think there's an excitement in what's ahead of us. So I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't, because I think the mistakes that we've made, the experiences we've had, have made us richer. And without those, we wouldn't be where we are now.
Good answer. Another good answer. Okay. Final question, unless you have anything else you want to add after. Do you have one single piece of advice or words of wisdom you would give to our viewers about anything?
Yeah, I think you've got to be passionate about what you do, and you've got to be true to yourself. So if you find yourself working in a job or doing something that just isn't exciting, then you've got to question whether it's the right thing for you. I would say follow your passion. Work hard, but also remember you have a family. And if my wife were listening to this, Gabrielle, she would probably say, I don't get it right. I disagree with her. I think I do get it right most of the time. but spend time with your family, because there's I don't know if you followed that. There's a guy called Jack Welch. Jack Welch was a very, very successful American businessman who took General Electric of America to number 2 in terms of market capitalization in the US back in the 1990s. But when he looks back on his life, and he was very aggressive as well, I didn't like the way he operated. But when he looks back on his life, he regrets not spending. He's got 2 failed marriages, and he regrets not spending enough time with his family. And also he regrets the way that he treated people. It's too late. It's too late when you're in your 70s to regret the way you did things, and you should have done things differently. I think now is the time to be aware of how you are in your life, and just reflect on that, and just ask yourself, have I got the balance right? Am I being fair to my family? Am I giving them enough time? Am I treating my colleagues right? Be true to yourself, and try and, be a good person. I believe it's possible to be a good person in work. I really believe that, and I think people respond to that.
Okay. That's it from me. I think that's all the questions that I had.
Great, Chaim. Well, it's been lovely chatting to you. Thanks for this, and glad to help.
Thank you very, very much.